And Dr. Beaumont, so this, kind of brings us to the conclusion is how ought Christians approach the movies? Can we, should Christians, obviously we need to interact with culture, but boy, with so much bad material being put out there, I'm sure there's lots of caveats.
One of my favorite examples of this is The Exorcist, still considered one of the most terrifying movies of all time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a horror movie, it meets its goal, right? It's incredibly scary and horrific and all that stuff that a horror movie should be. It's got a fantastic message that is strongly supported by the style elements. You can kind of run down the line and just say, yeah, I mean, this movie kind of ticks all the boxes. But then there's a separate question, whether or not I or anybody else really should watch it.
Yeah, right.
That's a totally different question. I don't know how many people really need to see that kind of style element collection in order to know that Satan is bad, that sort of thing.
Right.
Depending on what you get out of the film, that could save somebody's soul, right? I mean, if somebody who's going down the road into, Satanism, perhaps, or something like that, or they've given up their faith, this could be a catalyst to get them back into the church and get them thinking spiritual things again. And maybe they need the shock of those style elements to do that. So for that person, those things are probably useful, and we could say they're good. But I like trying to keep the good and bad elements on the objective side, and then subjectively, okay, well, now that we know what the movie is like, should I go to it or not? That's not really about good or bad. That's really more about me.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to cause me a problem? Is it going to cause my kids a problem? And that really has more to do with wisdom and discernment and things that you can't really teach easily in a book. It doesn't reduce to simple principles the way a lot of people would like.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. There are some movies out there that I think have some very powerful themes of redemption, but they just have so many bad elements to it that it's like for example, not that I'm recommending the movie, but it's called In Bruges, which is a very interesting tale of redemption about two hitmen, and but it's got so many bad elements in it that it's like I can't really recommend it to any people. Certainly, no one in our church,
Yeah.
But it's a shame that there really is a subjective standard. What I'm saying is that it's going to have bad elements, but you have to figure out whether those bad elements are necessary or not.
Yeah, some of my guilty pleasures, would include like Seven. I don't know if you remember that movie.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. I mean, it's an incredible movie, and you're just shocked almost out of your senses by the evil that is portrayed there. Which interestingly, they don't hardly show you anything. It's funny how much imagery I remember from that movie, even though it was only a few seconds.
Yeah, right.
Most of the movie, you're just thinking about that little flash or knowing what happened. But what's insane is that they build up this bad guy as just this like inhuman monster to do the things he does to these people. But then, and spoiler alert, turn the volume down if you haven't seen it and you want to. They finally catch him. They get him in the car, and they're trying to basically argue with him that he's evil, and he's taking these police officers apart.
Yeah, right.
He's basically saying, no, I'm not evil. Look at this. Look at that. Why did I do this? Why didn't I do that? How come this is okay and that's not okay? And they don't have an answer for him. And you just go, oh my gosh, like, is that the state of the world where somebody that commits these heinous crimes, is like logically arguing that he's not doing anything wrong? But it's just such an incredibly dark movie. I mean, my gosh, just horribly tragic, dark, depressing, but it's such an amazing criticism of moral relativism and these sorts of things that, yeah, to some extent I can kind of see it being useful for that, but I don't know how many people really should watch it for, because of those style elements. So yeah, the subjective judgment has to kind of come from within, and the objective judgment is more what we can do, with story structure and style and the stuff that I cover in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing you bring up in your book is the problem of desensitization, by constantly being exposed and maybe that's why it seems like Hollywood keeps escalating where it becomes more and more graphic because we're becoming desensitized to, the violence that they give us. That's a danger too that we have to be aware of.
Yeah, there's quite a bit, and I do go into this somewhat. I don't think desensitization is an evil per se, because
Mm.
there's even people whose jobs require it.
Yeah,
I don't want
right.
an overly sensitive doctor doing surgery on me and passing out when he sees blood. Um, but
Good point.
are we subjecting ourselves to so many things that we no longer react appropriately? I think that's where it comes down to for me. So this kind of goes back to Plato and Aristotle too. That Plato argued that because these, art was removing us from reality and creating feelings in us that weren't real, that art in general basically was kind of to be avoided. And what Aristotle said was, well, no, because sometimes we can experience things in art that will give us experiences in more of a safe environment, where now we can empath I can't say it now, empathize with the art, the characters in the art, and we can learn from those experiences without having to go through them ourselves. So, both of those things can be true in different ways. But if we find ourselves able to watch something horrific on the screen and it doesn't trigger anything in us, then perhaps we've made some mistakes somewhere, and we need to rethink,
Yeah.
the media that we're bringing into ourselves, because we don't want to become inhuman.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's a big danger, especially for a Christian worldview where we're made in the image and likeness of God. And that includes our bodily integrity, and
Right.
to see
Yes.
people mutilated, by dozens or hundreds or thousands, of these images, you do become affected by that you don't have the visceral reaction you really should do as a child of God.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we need to watch our emotional states and those sorts of things.